My name is Mbongeni Magubane, and I'd like to tell you my story. When I went to Rhodes University back in 2008, I'll never forget my dad seeing me off at the airport in Durban. He looked at me square in the eyes and he said, "Mbongeni, don't disappoint us." I'll never forget arriving at Rhodes University, the smell of the res as the housecom welcomed us. I'll never forget the exhilarating freedom of being at university, at a university I'd been told was a prestigious one. I'll never forget the feeling of being very lucky. Lucky to have all I did, lucky to have the resources that took me to Rhodes University, lucky to be there. So a day or two after arriving at Rhodes, my friends and I go to the servery, to the dining hall to eat our supper. Fresh first years, excited. And we get there and we get our trays, and after getting our trays we go into the servery to get our food, and thereafter there's the place where all the cutlery is. And so we look for the spoons. Spoons is how we've eaten main course all our lives, well, the group of us anyway. And so there are knives and there are forks, and there were no spoons. So we asked the head caterer, and we were like, "Could you please get some spoons, because that's how we eat supper." And she looked at us and said, "We don't use spoons for main course, we use them for dessert." And we looked at each other a bit confused and not quite sure about how to handle that. And she said the normal way to do it is to use forks and knives, and you don't use spoons. After a bit of a scuffle, we got our spoons and we ate, and we ate and we kind of got through it. But it began a very serious and important conversation. A conversation about what was right, what was normal, what was the appropriate way of doing it. We had to have a conversation, and at that point, the seed was planted in me. Belonging shows itself in the smallest ways. We had to think deeply, even then, about what the university, via its policies, via its framework, via its staff, had configured as the right way of doing things. Big questions. So fast forward to a number of years later, when the must-fall movements begin. And again, it seems that the question of belonging is at the core. Who gets to decide? Roads must fall, fees must fall. Fees must fall movement is about belonging. Who gets to decide? Who gets to go to school? Who gets to afford for the doors of education to be open to them? It's not about closing the doors of education, it's about opening them widely. And during that period of the beginning of the must fall movements, I found myself thinking back to my first year at Rhodes University during that week. And if we had had to try to communicate it to our caterer at that time, we might have said to her, "Knives and forks must fall." Not so much because we didn't believe that people should use them, but that the fact that they were being used as the normal way, the right way, the acceptable way, to the exclusion of all else, that was the problem. That was the challenge. And this is again another moment where I had to think about the concept of belonging. Think about what was right. Think about who gets to decide, who gets to move forward. That fostering belonging was a big and important issue. So fast forward to a number of years later, and I am working as an associate consultant for a leadership advisory. And again, the feeling of being lucky. Lucky to have had the job that I had, lucky to have completed the degrees that I completed, lucky to be here. And I was asked by one of our clients to put together a talk on Black Millennial Professionals and the concept of how do we think about them in the corporate space. So I reached out to 20 people in my network. 13 were Black African, 3 were Indian, and 3 were colored. They came from 8 different sectors in the corporate environment: agriculture, banking and finance, law, media, health. And all of them, I asked the same question. If you had to ask corporate leadership what to think, see, believe, or do, what would it be? And I expanded the research to 35 people in my network and to 70. 70 young Black millennial professionals from 8 different sectors, a spring clean of companies, all seem to have the same experience of corporate South Africa. I distilled the research and came up with 5 main items, 5 points that it all came down to, that all 70 were experiencing. And this is what they were. The first theme was Black economic empowerment. Much of the experience of the Black Millennial Professionals was that Black economic empowerment was treated more of a grudge initiative, something that we needed to do to conform to codes and tick boxes. The approach that was seemingly being taken by the corporate sector is the same which the corporate sector took to the feminist movement of the 1960s. And that was, let's call it the add and stir approach. We need a few more women? Fine. Add and stir. We need a few more blacks? Fine. Add and stir. So no rethinking, no thinking deeply about that social justice imperative and what it really required of us when we thought about BEE. It was more of a grudge initiative that got Black millennial professionals feeling and thinking that the veiled message was that the reason you got this job was because you are Black. The reason you got that promotion was because you are Black. The reason you should apply for that job, the reason you are going to move fast into the system, or maybe not survive at all, is because you are Black. The second theme was around disconnect with leadership. See, Stats South Africa tells us that the vast majority of the CEOs in the country still remain white and male. Much of the transformation over the past 20 years has been around non-executive directors, directors of HR on boards, positions that didn't quite hold strategic or operational power. So that disconnect with leadership seems to be twofold. It seems to be on the part of the Black executives who've been put on these boards but not given enough power to effectively lead to transformation or effect change, but equally on the side of the Black millennial professionals, young Black staff who think and work and influence and contribute to these organizations. The disconnect with leadership affected the way in which BMPs thought about themselves in the future, thought about their place in the company in the future. Do they belong here? Are they seen? Will they be invested in? Disconnect with leadership was probably one of the crucial points that every Black millennial professional, 70 of them, different companies, different sectors, were experiencing. Are they a part of tomorrow? And are companies preparing for a new kind of leadership? The third theme was around mentorship and coaching. Many of the Black millennial professionals asked the question about mentorship and coaching and the nature of it within the corporate space. It seems that executives are not doing a lot in thinking around new ways of mentorship, new ways of coaching. And this wasn't a South African phenomenon. Millennials all over the world have been crying out for mentorship and coaching, thinking about their roles, their role fits, their job descriptions in a new way. How do they get mentored on the job in a way that excites them, in a way that allows them to do more than they would have been allowed to traditionally do? Mentorship and coaching is an important dimension to fostering belonging. It is an important dimension to connecting with leadership. It's an important dimension to thinking and connecting to a new brand of people, a new cohort of leaders that come into organizations and systems. Mentorship and coaching was a big, big theme that came across with all Black millennial professionals I interviewed. The fourth theme was around policies and procedures. The big question here was about how do current policies and procedures inform organizational cultures? How do they shape them? When we have to think about the fact that South Africa, by and large, still remains geographically segregated by race. So many of our people are living in very separate environments, far distances from office parks. So a 7:30 meeting, for instance, a briefing on Monday morning at 7:30 will require one staff member who might live very close to the office a very short time to get to, then another who might live in Soweto or Diepsloot. So how do we think about that? How do we think about what we understand as being normal business practice, as being the right way, the simple way? That's how we've always done it. Policies and procedures deeply affect the organizational culture that we have. And so in thinking about where we have our end-of-year functions, and thinking about what we do when somebody falls pregnant, and what the nature of how we navigate death in a company, one staff member needing to be away for a week, whereas another for 2 days, based on the various cultural backgrounds, is an important component of thinking about the way in which we shape corporate culture. And so policies and procedures was something that Black Millennial Professionals felt needed relooking from the corporate space. The fifth and final theme, was around the question of belonging, which is in many ways an amalgamation of all the points that I've covered already. A sample group, 70 of them, 8 different sectors in the corporate space, didn't feel like they belonged. They didn't feel like they belonged in the corporate space in South Africa as a whole, and they didn't feel like they belonged in their own specific organizations in particular. They felt like they'd walked into the corporate dining hall and there were no spoons. They felt what was normal were the knives and the forks. They felt that they'd gotten looked at and told that how they'd done things, what they knew, was not normal. So how do we think about that? How do we think about the impact that has on the sustainability of corporate South Africa in the long term, insofar as leadership concerned, insofar as performance of our staff and our people are concerned, insofar as the ability of people to connect purpose to the work that they do? And how can they do that if they don't feel like they belong? Belonging is an important question. It's a question that the country as a whole has wrestled with. A country that has been divided heavily, and a country that needs to think deeply about how we begin to bring people together, how people can thrive and work in business. The question of belonging was felt through 70 Black Millennial Professionals, and I think is an important question for us to think about. Some concluding thoughts. 2 short things. 1, the work is urgent. The students that come from the Must Fall movement are coming into the corporate sector. Our organizational cultures are unsustainable and destructive, and it is important that we look at them. It affects our bottom line and our profitability. It affects the way in which we will be able to retain Black talent, which means inherently it affects our sustainability and our future. The second point is about what is the role of corporate leadership in healing? What's the role of corporate leadership in fostering belonging? What's the role of corporate leadership in changing this country, our broken country? The country that we are both complicit and implicit in breaking. Surely we should. And surely the role of leadership is to create and leave behind a better set of circumstances than what it found. The challenge now for corporate leadership, the challenge now for every executive, is to think about what our role is now.